all kinds of extremists, uh, crazy people, activists. They all have been using Telegram for a long time. It's become one of the most widely used apps in the world at this point. And these people responsible for Telegram or at Telegram, these people have indicated that they don't care about making money with it. They just want to see it exist. And so they refuse to have more advertising on it. They refuse to, well, they talked about taking the company public, have an IPO, get more investors on board, but it hasn't made any money yet, really. So a while ago, they talked about nearing the point of profitability, which is strange, right? Because if you have hundreds of millions of users, as they claim, you need to rent a lot of servers, a lot of server space, right? And also CDNs, because you can spread video on Telegram. So you can't Telegram cannot afford to build these server facilities. They have to rent some space in those, and they also rent from, I think, Amazon Web Services and Google Web Services. So it costs a lot of money, and so far they didn't care about really earning money from it. So they promised the service will stay free forever. The basic service will be free forever. There won't be any intrusive advertising. And this alone is kind of an aggressive ploy to just prevent other competitors from becoming more popular, because Telegram is free, right? It seems so free, it's so convenient. Even the Russian military was using it for a time. The Ukrainians were using it, but the Ukrainians now have something better, and NATO actually calls the new system amazing, and it's kind of a much better system. It's like a closed system. So it's like this: people use it and use it and use it because it's so convenient, and the promise that it's actually secure. And so they don't need to make money. Apparently they have investors, or they just keep running at a loss seemingly forever. And so we saw these right-wing extremists, we saw leftists, we saw Islamists. Everybody started to use this platform, even cyber attackers. So it's stuff that you only saw on the deep web, accessing with more effort. The stuff you saw on the worst hidden deep web, dark web, that stuff actually migrated over to Telegram because it's more convenient. So by having that content on Telegram for such a long time, there's been more compliance in the last few years, but not enough. By allowing this stuff or having this stuff on Telegram, this will exponentially increase the costs of law enforcement, especially in Europe and the United States, and the costs of anti-terrorism, because there's a fixed budget, right? And there's only so many laws that guide what law enforcement can do and anti-terrorism can do. So by having Telegram, it becomes more and more expensive to do this stuff, while you don't see the same exact effects in Russia and China. So, for example, there have been hundreds of dissidents arrested and tried in Russia, and at these show trials, basically, these people accused are being confronted with their own chat logs from Telegram. Now, so that means one way or the other, Russia can find these people. So there's not that big of a problem for the Russian system, because there's zero freedom in Russia, obviously. Same with China; they don't have the same kind of problem. And so, obviously, there's a question of possible backdoors in the Telegram software. Many suspicious players may have wanted to get access to Telegram. Russia is, of course, the prime suspect, but far from the only one. And there's always a way to get what you want. So, for example, most of the time when people use Telegram, to influence people to have these big groups with hundreds of thousands of followers and spread content, usually when people use it, they don't use the full capability of Telegram. There's not automatic end-to-end encryption. You have to turn that on in a one-on-one. I think it only works on smaller direct chats. You have to go into a submenu and another submenu. You have to tick these 4 different boxes to actually turn on the end-to-end encryption, supposedly very, very safe, right? So most people don't even do that, and their data can be analyzed by Telegram. They can figure out who you are, what your preference is, and what how your mind works, what do you talk about, who you talk to. So even just the metadata is important. And so then if you have a certain number of Telegram users and only a fraction of those are going to turn on the specific end-to-end encryption, then you have at least the metadata. So if you're the Russian government or some other government, you know that Joe Schmo is talking to, Humpty Dumpty in a specially encrypted chat. Why are they doing that? What do they have to hide? So this is how you can target dissidents. In Russia, for example, you can install spyware on their phones, and then you can get to the information that they're chatting about, bypassing the security of Telegram. And then there's another problem with Telegram. So experts have commented on this for a while. Usually what you do is you try to implement a security software code construct that's a proven design. Just like with airplanes, you don't design a new airplane from the ground up trying to reinvent the airplane. You use proven techniques. But what these Telegram guys did was they started to cook up their own construct. And this is highly questionable. In and of itself, people have found significant bugs, which may already have been backdoors. And it's been noted in scientific studies that whenever they fix a bug, which could be a backdoor, they introduce new problems to the software, to their own construct. So they can say, we fixed a bug, we fixed a vulnerability, but they don't say, well, we may have just created 5 new vulnerabilities. And if you know enough vulnerabilities, you may actually get to read all of that stuff that people talk about, maybe even the fully encrypted chats. So,
according to you, Alex, why did Alex Durov, what's his name again?
Pavel
Durov. Yeah, but why did he? Why was he arrested? Do you know? And what's going to come?
Well, there was the latest details on this actually came from the Wall Street Journal. I think this is from today, or if you count in the time difference, maybe it was yesterday. So this is some new information. So the French government actually had a double strategy with Telegram. They wanted to cozy up to them, and there was actually an invitation a couple of years ago when Pavel Durov actually dined with the French head of state. So they tried to convince this Durov guy to cooperate with Europe and especially the French intelligence, and just to create more security and have more options for anti-terrorism. But that offer apparently was refused. And the other strategy of the French was a fairly aggressive intelligence campaign. This hasn't been talked about in public before this Wall Street Journal story. They even broke into Durov's iPhone, and all the other details are, of course, still secret. Now, the question is, why would he use an American iPhone in the first place? And what are these other people using at Telegram? The programmers, the people in charge. They use Windows, they use Apple, they use Linux. There's all of this is questionable. There's always a way into this, a way that other countries may be using. And so this is kind of the crux of the whole story. Why wasn't there more cooperation? And so this Durov guy sets up shop in the United Arab Emirates, which was traditionally very close or under control of Britain, right? So why would he pick that? And so then there's even a French connection. And so the Arabs, or the United Arab Emirates, they helped America in the war on terror. So there's been that cooperation. So why did he set up shop and with these Arabs and subject himself to their control? So what are these guys going to do to him and his people over there? So this is kind of a strange aspect of the story. And even if you consider that the programmers might be living and working at another place in the world, where exactly is that? So is this a bunch of programmers sitting on a beach somewhere in the world? How is that secure? Did these people, these programmers, get approached, or their family members pressured? Did they get all approached by, let's say, Russian intelligence or Arab intelligence or Chinese intelligence? Did these intel agencies get to the programmers to implement weaknesses, just to get a backdoor into this whole thing. Because if you have a backdoor and you can read the very, very secret stuff that people talk about, you can recruit a bunch of new people, or you can expose some people. So, for example, we have a big, still ongoing, very big terrorism case in Germany. These ultra right wingers. They had lots of money. They had lots of weapons. They could have entered the German parliament through their contacts. They could have brought their people in. Serious stuff. And guess what? These guys use Telegram. And they use Telegram to find other people like them. So even if they have a very supposedly secure chat, end-to-end encryption, if the Russians or anybody else knows the contents of the chat, the Russians can then start to recruit these people and say, oh, well, there's, we actually know about your things and we want to help you. And you need to help us, because if you don't help us, we can protect you from other countries, governments actually catching you. So it's a quid pro quo, they say, and this is how they can recruit people.
So as you said, since there's a French connection, I have some information I can give you from the French press and the French media. So the French press just revealed today that Durov told the cops who picked him up as he got off the plane that he was expected to have dinner with Macron.
Again, he did that. He did that before. So they offered it again.
Right, but the Élysée formally denied this, and so that evening the president was in Le Touquet, which is his village in suburban areas. So it was a trap, I think, and my sources tell me that the French military and secret services are fed up with the way Macron is dealing with Ukraine, and they acted pretty much on their own. So, and the Russian disinformation pushed the fake news. You were talking about the Emirates. So they pushed the fake news that France lost a big military contract with the United Arab Emirates because of Durov's arrest, but it was fake. And even if it had been true, it would have been worth it. And it shows France have resistance hidden in the military and the secret services, as I previously noted with the new boss of DGSC. Having Golitsyn's book behind him on his official picture.
Yeah, and also there's another element to this, especially when it comes to France, because France is really, really good at anti-terrorism. And the problem that became bigger with Telegram is that these hacker groups like Sandworm and others, these Russian groups, they can spread ready-made software, tools. They can just hand them out. They can sell them for money, or they can just hand them out for free. And so this stuff that you could, in the past, you would find on the dark web or the deep web paying, in Bitcoin. But now you can just go on Telegram and actually people can get the software to sabotage industries, to sabotage governments, to sabotage all kinds of infrastructure. And so this is kind of like seeding a bigger cyber threat, because in the past, these attacks, like NotPetya, Sandworm stuff, these attacks could be traced back to the Russians. So they don't like that. So by handing out these tools like candy, they can actually create a bigger cyber threat in the future, which cannot really be traced back that well to Russia. It's like you handing out weapons. It's literally handing out weapons to these people. They don't have to program them themselves. They don't have to actually get them in a shady alley, buying them from some Iraqis or something. They can just download it and get it and use it. And so I think the French just have had enough of that. And it's like when I deal with these topics, the internet and privacy tools and encryption and all that. I mean, I did a show with Jeff once on this whole Julian Assange thing in WikiLeaks, and we talked about how even before Assange's early hacking career in Australia, this group, the International Subversives, there was even a hacker movement earlier in Germany, and it was very communist, and some of these people sold secrets, stolen data to the KGB, which became a scandal. So it goes back a long time. And when it comes to encryption, all these hackers, all these activists, they always agitated against any form of surveillance, and they had these Eastern contacts. So anything that would help catching terrorists, anything that would help catching spies, these activists absolutely hate it and they talk trash about it, right? Well, he started out making something else. This was the V-Kontakte social media network in Russia. So this is still the most popular, I think, social media network. And so he was involved in that. And then V-Kontakte was bought off by these different huge Russian entities, and he was out of that project, but he had kind of a severance payment, or he just sold some shares that he was left with. So he had, like, according to the story, he had hundreds of millions of dollars, if not more than $1 billion, to play with, he said. And then he claimed he put all his own money into this new project, which was called Telegram. And then he created this persona of, I did this in defiance of the Russians. So I did this to free everybody. And then he started to pose in these photos, with his six-pack abs and the yoga posing, and spilling some philosophy and whatnot. So he's trying to create this image and this persona. And the Russians tried to ban Telegram, but they did that in a very crude and primitive way. They just looked at these server addresses, these IP addresses, and they just blocked them. They just put whole IP ranges on the block list and thought, well, this is going to kill off Telegram. But the problem was, Telegram is renting other people's servers. So, for example, Telegram is renting stuff from, or has been renting stuff from, Amazon Web Services or Google or other big corporations. So if you just block all these IP addresses, other legitimate or other services do not function correctly. So the Russians then lifted the ban, but they never really had trouble again. They never really got into trouble again with this Telegram stuff. They just catch these dissidents without any problem, any issue. And of course, in this German case that's still in court right now with these right-wing terrorists, it came out that on these people's phones there was a spyware installed. I think it was the Pegasus spyware. I think this came from Israel or was sold by Israel. So there's all these commercial vendors offering these pieces of software. You can install that on somebody's phone, and then they can use whatever app they want. They can use Telegram, they can activate the encryption, but still everything they put into their phone is logged, and somebody else has access to it. So no service is fully secure, and this is something that many activists actually don't understand. They think they can access radical stuff freely, anonymously on Telegram, and then they get into radical activism because they think they're secure, they're safe. And this kind of lends itself for bad actors to just get these people into more and more trouble until they actually become full radicals. And when I looked at the Telegram construct, right, how it was built, they actually use these off-the-shelf components, like, for example, the AES encryption, which is like the most baseline product you could get. This is sort of the global standard for banking and military and intelligence material. So everybody uses this same AES algorithm. It's a Western algorithm, which is kind of strange. Why would this Durov guy just use a Western algorithm? And by doing so, it just creates the illusion, I think, that the Russians don't have access to it. Because, again, if it's a Western algorithm, how can the Russians be behind it? But if you screw up intentionally or unintentionally, if you screw up the implementation of that algorithm, the way you make a bigger construct out of it, if you screw that up, then of course the Russians can read this stuff. And there's some other disturbing fact about this encryption, this AES. I've talked about this for 20 years, and there's more studies now actually confirming these concerns. For example, there was a study from Adi Shamir, which is kind of like one of the world's most renowned crypto experts. He's a guy from Israel, but he did a combo study with other people. And they try to find weaknesses in AES, stuff that our militaries depend on, everything depends on. So they were finding more and more how to attack the AES algorithm and making it simpler and simpler and simpler to break this algorithm using supercomputers. And so they're actually at this point, they can actually break, or they're able to, or theoretically able to break simpler versions of AES. And they're just improving constantly to the point where they can almost crack, or theoretically crack, the versions that are being used in real world applications. And so when I looked at this algorithm and how it came to be, you can notice something very, 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 very interesting. So when the old standard was abandoned, just to make that quick point, when the old standard was abandoned and they had to make a new one, especially for the United States, they had different candidates. They had like 5 or 6 different candidates to become the new standard. And so there were actually candidates called like the one called Mars, and this came out of the cryptography research group at the IBM Watson Research Center. So IBM, of course, is a trusted player. They actually made computers for the code breakers of the NSA. So it's more reasonable to trust IBM with a codec like this. Then there were others like Twofish and Serpent and so on. But the winner, the ultimate winner of this contest, was called Rindale. And this came from Europe. This was created by Joan Damon and Vincent Riemann from Belgium. From this very small, very strange country. And so experts have noted that these other algorithms, like from IBM, these other ones were more secure. It seemed a lot more secure, but ultimately the European algorithm was picked because it was faster to process and to compute. And they thought there was a safety margin in Rindale, which was fairly large. But these experts like Shamir say, no, the safety margin is actually pretty weak. And if, in fact, somebody put in some weaknesses in this algorithm on purpose, then, of course, you can brute force break this stuff. You can use a supercomputer, and you can decrypt an intercepted message maybe within weeks, or maybe within a year, or maybe within days, depending on how many backdoors or weaknesses you have. Okay. So this whole thing with encryption is kind of like this could be a bigger problem than we think.